Hello and welcome. We're here again with the Good Newspaper review, this time for November. And the front page says Rocket Man's Inspiration. And we're going to hear all about that story in a few moments. Let me introduce my friend and colleague, Mark Perkins. Mark, over to you.
Thank you, Colin. Yes, I was inspired by the Rocket Man's inspiration story because I'm fascinated by space travel. I'm sure a lot of people are. There are people who've walked on the moon and they were just amazed by their experience. This story focuses on 5 men who traveled into space, and they were fascinated by the experience. And their experience actually enhanced their amazement and their worship of God. The story focuses on a man named Victor Glover. He's going to be a part of the team of the latest astronauts from NASA going into space, and he senses God in the sort of nitty-gritty, everyday, ordinary of his mission. And I think that's important because I often tell my son and daughter and others that if God is not involved in the everyday nitty-gritty, he's not a God worth following. And it's God, Victor Glover says, who's going to help him to be a better astronaut and accomplish that mission successfully. Those article also mentions John Glenn, the first man, first American into orbit. And he says that if you don't look at creation and are amazed, you're quite mistaken. And he looks at creation as a revelation of God. And I think that's exciting, you know, Colin, because we don't have to go to the moon to be amazed at God. We can step outside our front door. We can take a walk in the countryside. We can look up. We can see creation. We can look about and see creation. We also can be amazed. Over to you, Colin.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, there's so much to be amazed about in this world, and it does all point to God, doesn't it?
It does.
The other story that I came across, which I thought was a really powerful story, it's about a woman, lady called Sarah Watkins, who had chronic ME all her life. You know, human beings, we have a tendency to be often very proud and self-sufficient. And it's usually only when we reach the end of our tether, rock bottom, that we'll actually turn to God and reach out to him. And this is the case here. Sarah, she'd had illness all her life. It wasn't diagnosed until later on that she had ME. And she was told when she was diagnosed that she would be in a wheelchair for the rest of her life. But she cried out to God and said, God, if you really are there, please help me, because I can't live like this anymore. And she was happening to be listening to the radio and heard a man called Billy Graham talking, and he said that if you want to know God, you need to ask Jesus into your heart and life. And what that means is you need to put him in the driving seat of your life, put him in control, which is a difficult thing if you're proud, but when you're at the end of your tether and you think there's no option, you do it. And I think we all need to get to that point, really, to give God control in our lives, and he changes us so much, so completely. And this is what happened to Sarah. She started to read stories and accounts of Jesus in the Bible, and there's lots of them. And she started to pray, just little prayers, just talking to God, and then that started to change her. And as she grew in faith, one by one, her symptoms started to go away. And after thinking her life really at one point was completely over because she was bedridden, now, years later, she's a happy grandmother and looks back over her life and can give thanks to God. Isn't that wonderful? Mark, over to you.
Well, if you'd like to use the Good Newspaper yourself, details will follow at the end of this video. I encourage Christians to use the Good Newspaper because it's a good way just to introduce people to Jesus Christ.
Thanks, Mark, and thank you all for watching. I hope to see you again next month. Thank you.